Dr. Noonien Soong was presumably killed by the crystalline entity. There are some pretty infectious parasites which inhabit the Cove Palm, and Newfians hate old things. Hello, everybody, and welcome to The Seventh Rule with Cirroc Lofton.
Hello, hello.
My name is Ryan T. Husk, and today we're doing a review of Star Trek The Next Generation Season 4 already, Episode 3 entitled Brothers, written by the Rick Berman, directed by the Rob Bowman, superstar group right there. This was October 6th, 1990. Where were you? We are joined by a very special guest today, everybody. You know this guy from like a million Star Trek episodes. Even if you don't know him, you know him. It is Randy James. Hello, Randy. How are you today?
Hey, good to see you.
So you've played multiple characters in multiple series, Deep Space Nine, Next Generation, even in First Contact and Generations, I believe. Yep, I just checked. So you're all over the place. Can you just give everybody a little introduction on yourself and the characters you've played?
Well, I was actually, for the very most part, the same guy all the time from Next Generation second season, starting as a waiter, which served the Gok to Riker in, what was it called? Matter of Honor, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't have a name. I worked spottily on Next Generation for 4 seasons, starting second season, and I worked there every once in a while whenever they needed me. And during that time, I eventually got a Starfleet uniform. I did not have a name on Next Generation. That didn't happen until Deep Space Nine. However, since I'm obviously the same guy, we can assume that Jones was Jones.
Yep.
However, there were a couple of times I played different things. One time I was a Borg for a day on a second unit shot, and I don't think that even made the screen. But I was also a Bajoran in what is it called? It was the Four Lights episode, the TNG episode
Chain
about
of Command.
Very good. Yeah, part 1, and that was a weird little situation. I laugh when I think about it because it was basically lack of communication between ADs and shows, because I had been working on Next Generation as various things, sometimes standing in, sometimes hand doubles, that kind of thing. And then so I went to Deep Space Nine, and I was hired as a stand-in for O'Brien. So I was on the crew list over there. I was like full-time. However, apparently Next Generation didn't get that memo. and so I got a call one day. I was already working on Deep Space Nine, and I knew the sets, and I knew that I'd been seen a few times. And I got a call from Central, wanted me to do Next Generation, and I said, well, I'm working on Deep Space Nine, right? And he goes, oh, yeah, but it's okay. You're going to be an alien. And I'm like, okay. So I get there. There's 3 of us who are going to be aliens. And the other 2, they made up as aliens and completely unrecognizable. But they made me a Bajoran, which is basically me with a wrinkled nose.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And then they put me in the very seat that Patrick is going to sit in. So the scene opens up. We shot it on the promenade at Deep Space Nine, which was, they were excited to use a new set that they had across the road, And I mean, I felt like I really shouldn't be here, and I really shouldn't have, because I was recognizable, but it wasn't my fault. And there I was. So anyway, I went on to go and did a lot of, I was featured on Deep Space a lot as a security guard. I eventually got a name, and I eventually got lines and credits a few times, but most of my 64 appearances on DS9 are uncredited.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
I told you I don't do short answers.
No, that's great.
We love it. I love it. Before I get into some of the acting stuff, I always have a curiosity about this guy's name that always pops up. He's one of our favorite directors from the from the Next Generation. His name is Rob Bowman, and I don't remember working with him that much on Deep Space Nine, but I wanted to get your take on your experience working with him. We like his work, and it kind of shows his.
Absolutely.
I thought I went away for a minute.
His eye for detail shows. So I just wanted to get your take on your experience with him.
Rob was a very cool guy, long hair, pretty young, probably early 30s. The first time I met Rob, and I never got to know him well, but the first time I met Rob was on the Gok episode when I was my first featured bit was a Rob Bowman episode. What was that called? A Matter of Honor. And I remember thinking he was really cool. He did direct Brothers, the one we're going to talk about. He later became much more famous, and the reason probably you didn't see him on Deep Space Nine was he was doing X-Files by then. And he directed a whole lot of X-Files and became a producer, and I'm pretty sure that he directed the X-Files movie when they made it. So that was he got big over there.
Well, we see the talent that he had on Next Generation, because you can see the episodes that he does are just cinematographically, the way it's done, it's a lot better. Particularly even with this Brothers episode, there were some clever choices that I thought he made to really showcase the set and make some nice camera angles, bringing ones into twos and overs, and having people step into the mark. So it would be over the shoulder, would turn into an over the shoulder, even though it didn't start that way. So I do like the way he kind of plays with his camera work.
Mm-hmm.
It's funny you said that, because the one thing that I remember him saying during the filming of Brothers, and I don't remember the exact shot, but he set up a shot and they set it all up, and he looked at that and he goes, "If you don't like that, you don't like ice cream."
Well, now hang on a second. That's not fair, because if you don't like that shot, you're not going to say anything, because everybody likes ice cream. People need to get a hold of themselves if they don't. Okay, so Randy James, we're going to talk a little bit about how the sausage is made, because there's a really cool scene in this episode, Brothers, that we are covering today. Cirroc and I will discuss it much more in the next segment, but before we do that, there's some interesting things going on here. For example, we've got two characters played by Brent Spiner here. You've got Data, Dr. Noonien Soong, clearly some kind of witchcraft, cinematography witchcraft going on here. However, I know enough about film to know that if he's playing both of these, this gorgeous hand here cannot be his. Am I right? And what's the story behind this?
You are correct, sir. And it's funny because I just posted that photo yesterday, having no idea we'd be talking about it today.
Perfect.
So where to begin? First of all, I got called into that episode. They needed another stand-in for Data because the guy that had been rehearsing, it's unusual for stand-ins and whatnot to do rehearsals, but this episode was so technically difficult that they'd been rehearsing it, and I wasn't involved in that, but Guy Vardaman, who was usually standing in for Will Wheaton, I think, and sometimes Brent, was one of the guys rehearsing, and he had a car accident, actually. He's fine. But he couldn't work for a while. So I came in at the last minute to take his place because we have 3 datas going on. So we've got photo doubles, we've got stand-ins. And so when I got there, we had, I think Brent was Soong. He was. Mm-hmm. And there was a photo double completely made up as Data, with the makeup and the hair and the everything, so that over the shoulder he'd look exactly like Data. And I was standing in, so there was a lot going on. But at any rate, Rob Bowman was directing. Rob Legato was special effects guy. Rob was our EFX guy on both Next Gen and Deep Space Nine. He later won an Oscar for Titanic. I'm telling you, there was a lot of talent in the room.
Really? Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway.
Wow.
So I learned so much though. It must have been a 3 or 4 day thing that we did. And I am getting to the shot that you're asking about, but so we've got blue screen and split screen. You were exactly right pointing out that vague line, but that's what they use for a reference line to keep the shot separate. And then there was this thing that I'd never seen before, and maybe it wasn't brand new then, I don't know, and I don't know if it's still high tech, but it's called a motion control camera. And it took a lot of time, but what they did was they would do a shot. Let's say that Brent is playing Data. They would shoot that shot and lock down all the movements of the camera, and then program that into the computer so that the camera would then repeat the exact movements when we switch characters. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
I know, it's like techno stuff.
That's tough.
So when we were shooting the Soong and Data thing, I think he was talking over the shoulder. He'd be talking to the photo double. But in the shot you're looking at, Brent went. I'm on the left side where you can't see me because I'm on the blue screen side. And Brent reached across and touched my face. I've always loved that face.
Very good.
And by the way, I thought Brent should have got an Emmy for this because he was amazing in this.
You should have gotten 3 Emmys for it.
Seriously though, 3 distinct characters, 2 look identical, but you always knew which one was talking. I told him this the last time I saw him about 3 years ago here in Denver, which is when I watched the episode for the first time in about 20 years because I was going to see him and I wanted to just kind of remind myself. At any rate, so once we got everything shot, to get to this side, this was a second unit day after the fact, and they've got both sides of the shot, like you pointed out. There's Data and there's Soong, but there's no hand. Okay, and so they literally put latex makeup on my hand, so it not only had color but texture as well. And you can see that hand looks 100 years old, and I wasn't quite 40 yet. Anyway. So, but it was a really tricky thing, and this was fun, but thank God for monitors because they've got the camera behind me, and we have to perfectly match my arm coming into where you can just see Brent's shoulder just a little bit there, and it has to be exactly right, or it's not gonna play. And so the camera's behind me, and I'm working with the second unit guys who are all nice guys. We've all worked together before. And they're telling me, okay, a little left, a little right, a little up, a little down. It's like this for like a half an hour. And I'm like, I have no idea what we're trying to do. And I finally said, is there a monitor that I could see? And they go, oh, yeah, that's a good idea. So they got me a little monitor and put it off camera in front of me. And now I can see it. So I can see whether it matches or not. You know what I mean? So I'm looking at the shot and I get my arm in there and just go, like, perfect, shoot it. And I've always loved that face. So when he said it, he was saying it to me. And then I was patting his face when Soong said it.
That's movie magic right there.
It really was. It was educational.
He said it to you, and you were the one touching the face. That's exactly. A lot to get around.
I know when I saw him last time, he was here in Denver about 3-4 years ago for Starfest, which they don't do anymore, sadly. He actually did the last panel for the last Starfest. Oh, wow. But anyway, I hadn't seen him since probably first contact. And anyway, I went up to him and went to shake his hand, and he was still wearing a mask, it was still kind of post-pandemic, and he didn't want to shake hands, but I told him, I said, my hands are your hands. And he goes, oh, really? And I told him, I said, yeah, when Soong touched Data's face, it was me. And he says, I've always loved that face.
Excellent. Well, Randy, it seemed with all of that technical stuff and the fact that it took 30 minutes just to position the hand for, a 4-second shot, it seems like you guys were probably in the trenches on that set for multiple days. Do you remember how many days it was? Were there other things going on? Do you have anything else to tell us about that? Because I just kept watching this. I also heard that some things that didn't make the cut was Brent also played the family dog. He also played the dishwasher. Like he was all, but then they're like, no, it's too much. We got to pare it down. And but he was amazing. But there was a lot. These kind of things take a long time. So it must have been multiple days, right?
My part was definitely multiple days. And what I remember was working almost entirely in the Soong's laboratory set. So it was that set with all three actors that I worked on the most. I don't think they needed me for other parts of it. And I don't remember, because typically an episode is 7 or 8 days of very long days. And I think I did at least 3, maybe 4. I don't remember. But we were always in the, would you say in the, we were always going over. And I mean, the hours were crazy because it was a very ambitious show.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'll say. Do you recall at all the set they built for the boy who was in the glass box? Did you happen to? I know you weren't in those scenes, but they had the boy in this episode who was being cared for by Dr. Crusher, and he was in some kind of Starfleet-looking glass box bubble that they were using to quarantine him. So I just wanted to know if you had caught a glimpse of that set. It looked pretty elaborate.
Same episode? Brothers?
Same episode, yeah. Yeah.
I'm sorry. It doesn't even ring a bell. I was all about Brent on that one.
You were on the Brent side. Okay, yeah, no, totally. Because, for those people at home that don't know, in these kinds of scenes, the way they break it down, this is a Brent day. We're going to bring him in. And, the other Dr. Crusher scenes were probably done on other days.
Absolutely, yeah.
Also, my question, Randy, this is a Rick Berman episode. We didn't see many Rick Berman written episodes.
If any.
I think this might be the only one I've ever seen, actually. And maybe there's a controversy there. Maybe he took the credit for somebody or else. But I just thought it was interesting that his name was on this episode. And I wanted to ask you, was he present on the set while you guys were filming because it was his episode?
Not only no, but hell no.
Okay.
Honest to God. First of all, I think you might be onto something about taking credit. I don't know facts about that, but I've heard from others that.
Interesting.
I'm going to get in trouble for this one, but I've heard that Rick doesn't write anything, and that comes from people who do. And I can tell you that after 11 years of working on Star Trek, and 7 of them were full-time, I saw Rick Berman on either of the sets maybe 5 times ever. He was not a hands-on guy.
Were there any?
Mm-hmm.
No. Were there any particular causes for that? What was the occasion for him to be present? Was it a guest actor that he wanted to meet? Was it a big season-ending finale? What was the thing that would bring Rick to the table?
That is a great question, because I've got 2 fun answers for that.
First time. All right, here we go.
All right.
Well, they're not that great, but the first time I remember him coming on the stage, and I'm not sure, this was way back, well, when Next Generation did its 100th episode, Rick Berman carried the cake in the shape of the Enterprise because he was being followed by Gene Roddenberry. Okay, Gene was still around. And so they came to the set to celebrate the 100th episode. And Gene sat in the captain's chair holding this really cool cake in the shape of the Enterprise.
Wow.
And so they took a few pictures of that, and I think you can probably find those online. But at one point, they invited everybody working that day, everybody, lighting guys, crew guys, camera, everybody on the stage went on to the bridge, which was a real crowded bridge, and then took a group photo. And sadly, I don't know anybody, including Doug Drexler, who can find that shot. And so there is a shot somewhere of me in a photo with Rick Berman and Gene Roddenberry, but sadly, I don't have one.
Yeah, you're right. I'm seeing
Wow.
this picture, but I don't see you in this particular one.
Yeah, that's the day. That is absolutely the day. And so
Wow,
that's not
that's
the
cool.
so that wasn't, that was before they invited everybody else. And we're talking 50 more people up on this stage.
Wow.
So, but yeah, that's
Wow.
the one.
It's amazing.
I was there
100th
that day.
anniversary.
I can't prove it, but I was there.
We'll
Oh, we
find it.
believe you. We believe you.
I know.
I've seen you on the set myself with my own eyes, so I know you were there.
Well,
Well, it's funny. I'm sorry, but Cirroc, we were
No, please
talking
go ahead.
about how you different things on shooting on different days. You and I only got to know each other sitting outside pretty much because your scenes had nothing for me to do. If it was you and Avery in a room, there wasn't even a background. Nobody, you know what I mean? There weren't very many things where we actually were in the scene together at all, unless there's one I know where we crossed each other in the promenade. But I'm just saying, we worked together for 7 years, but we almost never were on camera together. So.
Yeah, but we spent a lot of time in those Paramount alleys talking and shooting the shit though.
Me more than you, but yes, absolutely.
Oh, that's so cool to be a fly on the wall in those days. Wow. But you, Randy, you kind of, and by the way, we only have you for another minute or two, and we really appreciate you taking the time all the way out from Colorado, where it's a beautiful 78 degrees. But what you have enjoyed in your life is kind of the double fandom. You know, what the fans always want. You kind of got to be a fly on the wall watching Star Trek magic happen, but also a participant. You know, people like Cirroc, Cirroc was really surrounded by it, engrossing. He's memorizing lines. He's doing all this stuff. You know, and I'm sure, Cirroc, you got plenty of time to sit back and really soak it up and enjoy it. But with what Randy was doing, he got to kind of fly under the radar sometimes, kind of observe, kind of think about it and soak it up at the same time, again, as participating, as having, you know, your hand front and center or your face reaction, you know, something like that. Can you just give us a feeling of what that's like in hindsight?
Well, I mean, thank God it was Star Trek or nobody would be talking about it for 25 years. You know, first of all. So, and I was a huge fan of The Next Generation, or excuse me, the original series, which, you know, came on when I was only 11. I didn't get into it till high school. It was already syndicated. But I really, really was into it for a long time. And it never even occurred to me there'd be a chance to work on Star Trek because it was done. You know what I mean? There was 10 years of no Star Trek until the movie came out. And then I was pretty excited about that. So, you know, and even so when Next Generation, I'm sorry, I'm just blah, 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 blah. It feels really good, but it's funny because it's almost more important 30 years later than it was at the time, you know, because of streaming and social media, some people do know who I am now, and most didn't before. It's like I was, they recognized my face, or, you know what I mean? They'd seen me a few times, but they couldn't put a name with it or anything like that. So for me, it's good.
Mm-hmm. Sounds amazing.
Well, you survived 2 different shows without being a red shirt and getting killed. I mean, that's amazing.
Technically, I was. Well, you know, we flipped the red shirt colors.
Yep.
Kirk's red shirts wore red shirts and Kirk wore gold. Picard wore red. His red shirts wore gold. I actually wore a red shirt on Picard's, but I later was a gold shirt. I was a security officer and I beamed twice and never got killed. So yeah, I got that going for me.
What a survivor.
Good genes.
All right. Yeah. So, Randy, we very, very much appreciate you taking the time today. It's always really cool having you. We had you on Virtual TrekCon in the past, and you were so much fun. And it's just great having you again. You've got so many stories. I'm sure you've got so many more, and we'd love to see you again sometime. But once again, thank you so much for hanging out with us.
Oh, thank
Thank
you
you
for
very much.
having me, and I am happy to talk to you guys anytime you want.
Awesome. See you tomorrow. All right, everybody,
Okay.
stick around. We've got way more to discuss with this episode, and we'll be right back on the seventh rule. Hey, everybody, welcome back to the seventh rule with Cirroc, the game changer Lofton.
Hello, hello.
Everybody knows he changed the game of podcasting for the better.
Yeah, right.
He stretched out that 3-point line. He really spaced out the floor. I mean, this is,
Yeah.
oh, shoot, wait, that's Steph Curry. All right, but here are the trivioids of the week. No, Cirroc changed the game. Everybody knows it. Here they are. The Enterprise crew has been forced to cut short a 2-day liberty on August 2. I guess maybe, I don't know what the liberty means. I think that means they're at liberty to pursue their own missions.
Okay.
An ordinary laser game duel goes to 21 points. Everybody knows there are some pretty infectious parasites which inhabit the Cove Palm. Data has the computer run a cascade force field sequence. Dr. Noonien Soong does a little dentistry on Data and lore. Dr. Soong was presumably killed by the crystalline entity. Data decided to emulate his emancipators. Dr. Soong always hoped Data would become a scientist, maybe even a cyberneticist. And Dr. Soong thinks of himself as a cyberneticist Michelangelo. Nufians hate old things. A pack-led trade ship saved Lore after 2 years of drifting in space, like Peanut Hamper. Nobody knows the transporters better than O'Brien and LaForge. All right, lots of trivioids. So, Cirroc, you've heard talk of Dr. Noonien Soong. There was also an Alton Soong and an Adam Soong, like in Picard, and it's been mentioned a bunch of times, but now you finally get to meet him. Did you immediately recognize Brent Spiner as playing him, or did it take a while?
I did not recognize him until the first part of this segment when you mentioned that it was Brent Spiner who played the role.
No way. That's so cool.
Yes, I didn't. I was wondering who is the actor that's playing Dr. Soong because he looks familiar, but I can't quite put my finger on it. So I had no idea that that was Brent. So uh,
That's
that was
amazing.
pretty amazing. It's
Wow.
pretty amazing that he pulled that off on me because I wasn't able to recognize him.
And you know, watching it through the lens of knowing all that stuff myself, like I was actually really impressed with how they were able to do the movie magic, the television magic of having the same person play multiple characters. And it really was not noticeable. Like there was only one time when I noticed that Data's eye line wasn't directly on Noonien Soong's lower face, right? I noticed it one time because I was looking for it, but that could be explained away. Like that happens all the time in film. You know Cirroc as much as anybody that when you're on camera and you think you're looking right into somebody's eyes, and it doesn't look like it. It looks like you're looking off to the side, and they're like, "Oh no, no, tilt your head, tilt your head," and you're like, "Really? Here?" And they're like, "Yes," and then you look at, okay, they were right. So it could be any of those things, but
Yeah.
really impressive work otherwise.
I usually get eyes up here, buddy. So I never overshoot the mark. So it's interesting that he did that. No, I thought he did a fantastic job because I didn't know it was him. And the other thing I think that Brent Spiner needs to get a tremendous amount of credit for is what Randy highlighted in his kind of observation, which is the difference in personalities that was distinguishable between these three characters now that he's playing. They were very different personalities. It's not easy to get away with that. Um, Lore, for example, did a move which I really loved, where Data says, early on the episode, Data realizes he was lied to another lie. So Data says another lie, and Lore looks over like he rolls his eyes like this guy. He's such a
Yeah.
wimp. He just now figuring out I lied to him about something. He's offended about a lie. Like get over it. And so like the contrast in personalities, and even this old Dr. Soong had a different level of ambition in his eyes, a different level of twinkle in his eye that neither Lore or Data have. So I think it's just amazing that Brent was able to pull off these different kind of polarizing different characters, and not hint that it's the same actor. For me, that was pretty. I mean, obviously, Lore and Data are the same actor, but it's just the way he performs them. They have two different personalities that are distinguishable.
Yeah, and so as the story goes, Dr. Noonien Soong built his children after his own image. And so that's why, they wanted Brent to play him, is because when Dr. Noonien Soong built them, he looked like that. He was at that age. And so then since then he's aged, and he's, some brilliant cyberneticist. And then everybody made fun of him because he always made mistakes. So Lore was a problem, as we know. And so then he built Data and then didn't give him the emotions chip. But one thing that was a little confusing, just because he's like, we don't know how to handle this thing. And I think he was not fully finished, but he had the emotions chip right there. And then he gives it to Lore. And then I'm wondering, but Lore already has emotions.
Yeah, that's yeah.
So I don't think that emotions chip did much for Lore. I think Lore was mostly doing it to prevent Data from getting it. So now he's got this power over his brother, which is the thing you've always wanted, I now have. So that was but that was something where I'm like, does he have double the emotions now? Because that sounds obnoxious.
Double your emotions.
That's right.
When he took that second emotion chip, or whenever took that emotion chip, he said a line that kind of jumped out as a great delivery to me. And he was, creepily about to attack Dr. Soong, and he says, I don't know exactly what it's doing, but it's doing something. And he was referring to the chip that was just, the emotion chip that was just given to him. I love the way he delivered that line. It was cynical. It was, it gave the tone of what he was trying to accomplish for me, which is, I'm a bad guy, I'm deviant, and, this is more fuel for my fire, this emotional chip. It kind of like even makes me more hypersensitive or more lore. Is what I got.
Yeah, and the thing is, we could always tell, as Randy mentioned, which character he's playing. Even when Lore was dressed as Data, he's very clearly and obviously Lore, which just, really speaks to what a great actor Data or Brent is that it never felt exaggerated. It just felt like a different character. Because sometimes if you're playing three different characters, you have to be exaggerated to a point where it's very clear who you're playing. But he just nails these characters. I would like to know, from Brent, like which of those three characters was more fun to play, because Lore seems like the most fun to play. But maybe Soong, honestly, I felt like Soong was very close to his Captain Picard impression. Yeah, that's very close to his Captain Picard voice when he does a Patrick Stewart impression. But maybe he just says like, nope, nobody can compare to the original. I just like being Data. I don't know. It'd be interesting to find that out. But Soong was definitely his Picard voice when he does a Picard impression.
Yeah, I'm not sure about that. I have to go back and listen to the voice, but I will say that I think Data also played another character. So not just a Data, Lore, and Soong. There was a fourth character that Brent Spiner plays in this episode, and that is the character that turned into more of a robot and started going into this autonomous, I need to go into this, right? That's neither Data, that's not the Lore. That was like this like robot button. I don't know what else to call it, but he went into robot.
Yeah, he went into like autopilot or something like that, right? Like AI autopilot. That's true. And how unbelievably impressive was it when he was doing all of those numbers in Picard's voice, right? So clearly, I mean, obviously he's not doing the voice, but like, how did he go? Because I'm watching his mouth completely match up with the audio. And it's all,
And why were the numbers so long?
it was
not
all
like,
one take. I'd be like, can we chop it up into like 18 takes, please? He was just like 7, 7, 4, 3, 1, 1, mark, 7. I was like, I can't. And I'm watching him. And I'm like, how did they do that so perfectly?
He had to have been reading that for sure. There's no way he memorized. I wrote in my notes. I was like, no way he memorized this stuff. Too many numbers to memorize all of those numbers in that sequence.
Just that he matched the exact speed and tempo.
Yeah. I wrote. I even writing down the fake numbers. So I didn't want to rewind it and actually write the numbers down. But just writing fake numbers took me. It was enough brain power. I was like, this is too much. How did he do this?
I did wonder,
that was interesting. Yeah.
Because normally you would think, okay, Patrick Stewart records it first, and then Brent matches it. But then I was like, well, maybe Brent is saying it, and then Patrick Stewart did ADR and did the voiceover to match it. Is probably more likely. What do you think?
Yeah, that would be the easier way to do it, because when you're doing the ADR, you're not on camera. And so you can read, right? So you can both read easily and not look like you're reading. And you can kind of mouth and voice match the image on screen. So probably did it the other way around. I thought that was clever. There was a lot of things that Rob Bowman, I thought, did. You know what I didn't need in this episode, though? I didn't need the storyline of the two boys who were laser tagging or whatever, and he ate some poison. It wasn't even necessary.
No, I agree.
It wasn't even necessary. It was.
I agree. It seems like it's just maybe a theme that they were trying to do in the 4th season, which was like, let's have the A plot and B plot be the same theme. Like the episode before this one, family. It was about Picard's family, but then secondarily about Worf's family. And this was about Data's brother, but secondarily about this one. The end was cute. The end worked. But I agree that either they could have given us a different B plot, or you could have just filled out the A plot more. I agree. It wasn't terribly necessary,
And then, Riker's dressing down this 10-year-old kid. Like, the way he's doing it, it's like, come on, he's 10, bro. He's like, do you know what that was? Do you know what
what I expected? I expected
when, bro, I'm 10. I don't know what
when the kid left, I expected Riker to be like break it and be like, like kind of laugh, like, kid, boys will be boys. Like how you really want to scare them straight, but then when they leave, you're like, oh, stupid kid. You know what I mean? But he didn't. He stayed like all like, I'm seriously concerned.
Yeah.
It was a freak accident.
Handle the truth.
He just pretended, man. And then he didn't make him eat that poison. The kid went and ate the poison because he ran away from it. He's absolved of any guilt there. That's ridiculous. Go easy on him. I've done worse.
He was dressing him down like he was in the military, like he was one of his subordinate officers or something. Like, this guy's it's a kid, bro. He's a kid. He's not signed up for Starfleet. He goes through training. He's not part of some code. He didn't.
They actually cut out a scene where Riker pulls his belt out and starts spanking him with it. And even Worf was like, "Whoa, slow down, too much." It's like, let me at him. I'm so mad right now.
Yeah, it was too much. I was like, you know what? I would not want to be a kid on the Enterprise. I'm glad I was on DS9, because Riker, boy, he's like, dude, he's up a little, man. This is just a kid. He made a mistake.
Hey,
he's like,
but also, not to change the sub, but I wanted to get this in before I forget. We were talking about Rick Berman and the episodes he had written. And yes, this was in fact his first written by episode in all of Star Trek, right? Which means maybe he wrote it. Or as you may have suspected, maybe somebody else wrote it and then they quit, or they weren't proud of the episode, or whatever it was. And then
he could have come up with the idea,
and then Rick Berman had to finish it, or anything like that.
Or it could have been Rick Berman's idea. He could have said, "Hey, I have this idea about Data, meeting up with his dad and and then this, the sub story. And somebody else could have physically actually done the writing, but it's still his idea. I don't know.
Yeah. But then he does have 4 more writing credits in season 5, 3 of which are certainly like what you mentioned just now, which is story by. He has a story by for Ensign Row, Unification 1 and 2, and then 1 more actual written by, which means supposedly he has the credit for writing the whole thing, which is A Matter of Time. So that's just interesting. And, he's got a bunch, like he's a showrunner or created by for Deep Space Nine and created by Voyager, and he has a few story bys for those. But anyway, just interesting that those are his 2 written by credits, certainly a couple first. But here's something. How about today's home run of the episode?
The home. It's not even really that tough at all. But it's Brent Spiner.
Yeah.
That's the Brent Spiner episode. It was great. He did it. He made the. Actually, I would have liked to take the reason why I don't want the B storyline is because I would have liked more of the A storyline. And I know this. I'm late to this Dr. Noonien Soong party. So forgive me for what I'm about to say.
Ooh.
But I'm not exactly sure why they would use that name and not have an actor with some Asian descent playing that character. It bothers me to a certain degree. It would be like using an African name and having a non-Black person play the character. It just doesn't seem. It doesn't seem appropriate for me. I don't know. I'm sorry, I got to say it, but it's cultural appropriation when you take somebody's cultural name, like a Soong, which has, in itself like this Asian ancestry behind it, root etymologically. So it just doesn't make sense to me that you would have that name and not have an actor with that kind of background nationality wise. Change the name and I'd be more okay with it. It could be more. It just seems like a cultural appropriation. It doesn't seem politically correct to do. So that's my little gripe on that particular thing. But in answer to your question about the home run itself, it's hands down Brent Spiner. He carried this episode with an honorary mention to, by the way, to Rob Bowman, who I did love his directing choices that he made in this episode.
Interesting point about Dr. Noonien Soong, because I remember when I first heard it, I was like, that is such a weird name. Noonien Soong, it just seemed very like strange. And Soong is spelled Soong, but to your point, it's very close to, yes, names of Asian descent. For example, there's a director of Prodigy named Soong Shin, if I remember correctly, spelled Sung, very close. So I hadn't even really considered that, but I remember when I heard the name at first, I was just like, it felt there was something a little peculiar about it, but that's probably what that was. But yeah, obviously the home run has to go to Brent. And I agree completely that Rob Bowman also gets a secondary one because it wasn't obvious. It wasn't
obvious.
The things that they were doing oftentimes are very obvious, but this was not. So that means it was executed very beautifully, especially when it's raised up into HD. Little lines and changing of lighting and stuff like that become more prominent, and you still don't notice it.
And a little quick last add-on. I don't think it's an accident or coincidence that Rob Bowman directs the episode that Rick Berman, his first written episode. I'm pretty sure Rick Berman says, I want Rob Bowman directing.
I need Rob Bowman.
So I'm just saying.
That's a great point. All right.
Also, shout out to the set designers in this episode. Those guys did a fantastic job dressing Dr. Soong's laboratory. There were a bunch of little things in the background that just caught my eye, like little flasks with electricity flowing through them and spin wheels with all kinds of cool looking Michelangelo, Da Vinci type gadgets and big books and stuff. So for the guys that did the set dressing in this episode, I want to give them their kudos and flowers because it did add to the feel of being in this laboratory and inside of the mind of a genius like Dr. Sue.
Absolutely. Good stuff there. Other geniuses include, but are not limited to, Homer Frizzell, Dr. Marie Segal, Eve England out in Wales, Yvette Blackmon-Tom, TJ, Jackson-Bey out in Missouri, Titus Mohler, Dr. Mohamed Noor, Tierney C. Dieckmann, Anil O. Polat, Joe Balsarotti, Mike Gu, and Dr. Stephanie Baker. Congratulations to them. Carrie Schwent, Faith Howell, Edward Foltz, my live from Tokyo, the Matt Boardman. Congratulations to him as well. Chris McGee, Justin Weir, Jake Barrett, Henry Unger, Allyson Leach-Heid, Julie Manisfee, Jed Thompson, Dr. Susan V. Gruner, Glenn Iverson, Dave Gregory, Tim Baum, Chris Sternett, and of course, Jason Okun, Greg K. Wickstrom, and the Roddenberries, everybody. The Roddenberries. The rock band, the Roddenberries. All right. House band of Star Trek Las Vegas. Check it out. Creation Entertainment, STLV. All right. Let's do the free-for-all. We will jump on that next. We'll be right back on The Seventh Rule. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to The Seventh Rule. Can you believe it? It is finally the free-for-all. Melissa Longo's here.
Hello.
Jason Okun as well. And thank goodness for that. Carrie Schwent is telling us that Brent Spiner also auditioned to be the first Jeffrey Combs. Faith Howell is on the Enterprise D, of course. Chris McGee, the Lord of Darkness, has his Stembleton Chill shirt. Pretty cool. And Matt Boardman and I are matching backgrounds finally. Do you guys know that Matt Boardman's like 6'10"? He's hulking.
No, he's so tall.
I'm only 6'3".
He's a gentle giant, though.
Wish I was 6'10".
All right. Jake Sisko guesses the IMDb score.
This episode would have been higher without the B storyline for me. I would have given a higher score. But I'm going to say, because it's memorable and we get to see Dr. Sug, I'm going to say it's an 8.1.
Not too shabby. Does anybody else have any guesses that doesn't already know the answer?
8.3.
7.7.
I take the middle. I take the 8.2. It's probably there.
All right. The answer is, and somebody did get the Cirroc Lofton award of the day, it's George Mirasan's height. 7'7".
7.7.
Woo!
Chris, didn't you do this again like a week or two ago too?
Yeah.
So I did
He's 3 out of 4.
He's like, here's the secret.
1
You
and
just
2.
look on IMDb.
Right.
He's like, it works every time.
I multiplied by...
No, that's very impressive, Chris. Good job. All right. Did we have any non-appearance mentions? I didn't catch any. Okay. Or any some kinds of or some sorts ofs? Oh, we got one.
I heard one when Laura, when Sung announces that he's dying, Laura says, "You're not that old. You look fine. What is this, some kind of trick?"
Excellent. That was a sneaky one. Sneaky.
Yeah.
Even Jason's impressed by that. He's taking a note of it real quick.
Yeah.
All right, Melissa, please get us started off on the right track. What did you think of this memorable episode?
I thought this.
That was good. You got
Nice.
right into that. Takes me time to warm up a little bit. I got to start with what and then incorporate the next one. That was great.
I have to say, this is obviously Brent's episode. He knocked it out of the park. He was very good and very believable at playing three different characters. I thought they were. I forgot that it was the same person playing each character, and I'm so impressed, especially with the different physicalities of each character, from Sung to Lore to Data. They all carry themselves so differently, and it was very, I'm so impressed with him as Data. And I'll keep it short, but I will say that Dr. Soong reminded me of Dustin Hoffman, and I might be the only one who thought this, but I kept thinking Dustin Hoffman. And I have a question. Did anyone else get skeeved out when Lore lifted his fingernail?
Nope, that's not right.
No, thank you.
Yeah, but overall, it was a decent episode. So, yeah, good job, Data, Brent, Lore, Sue.
Good party trick by Lore. He does that at every family gathering to show off.
Yeah, and
It's a lighter too, by the way.
Yeah. Before I finish and forget, I was so impressed by Brent Spiner's ability to mimic Jean-Luc Picard's voice. Gosh, that was so good. He was so good at that. Okay, that's all.
Excellent. Number one.
Number one.
Number nine. Number nine.
Somebody else who can do an excellent Captain Picard impression, and he'll show you right now, Jason Okun. What do you think of this episode?
Absolutely. I'll do that later. I'll do that impression later. There are three things that stand out about this episode for me. Obviously, it's a Brent vehicle, sure. I mean, that stands above all. Then you have Rob Bowman's directing, and third is Von Jones' music. So these three things stand out for me. I think the story is what it is not the strongest one, and Cirroc, I agree. So the B story, I think, drags the episode down a little bit. It's understandable why that story is there to sort of connect, sort of juxtapose the brothers' situation for Data. But in the end, I think it kind of falls flat and drags down the episode a little bit. And frankly, they ended up losing a bit of dialogue from at least that was in the script in the shot episode, most likely for time, so they can fit in the B story. But it's certainly enjoyable, and I think I probably liked it more when I was a little bit younger, because you kind of get carried away in the acting, and you understand it's the same person, and you just get caught up in this. You start thinking about it, maybe the story isn't exactly top notch, but it looks wonderful. I mean, again, I love Rob Bowman's directing. His approach. There's the shot of Data at the aft science station. He used such an angle that I don't think I've seen before, probably since. It's kind of a very unique way of showing that part of the bridge, which is kind of a difficult thing to do. First of all, after 3 years of being on the same set, to see something new, to see something different. If you notice in a lot of the shots, there's something always in the foreground. Even sometimes in these close-ups, there's something in the foreground, maybe even sort of out of focus, that gives you depth and dimension, especially in a small room. That works really well to sort of expand the palette a little bit. But again, I think it's a good episode. It's certainly on Brent is, tremendous in it. He did so much work that he was not in the next one they filmed. He was not in Family, probably because, they didn't want to give him anything after this.
Oh, really?
And let him relax for a week. Yes. Yeah, because they shot this right before Family.
Mm-hmm.
So that's probably why he was not in it. Because he had obviously a lot to do here. There's a lot more to say, and I'll save it for later.
Do you think maybe he also did like a little overtime? Like maybe he just did like an extra day or two because there was just so much to do. And so maybe that's another reason. Maybe they just planned it out. They're like, this is going to be such a Brent heavy episode. We just won't write him in.
I think he shot the scenes in Soon's lab for like 2.5 days. I think it was just two and a half. I think those days just him working with himself and obviously somebody reading lines to him.
That's
Great
a lot
stuff.
of work.
Thank you very much, Jason Okun. Oh, I see what's behind you. That's pretty cool. Yeah. All right. Carrie Schwent, aka Crafty Bear, you got a lot of datas behind you. It looks like a fistful of datas practically. Explain yourself. What do you think of this one?
Sort of the idea for it actually came to me from one of the lines. I think it was Riker that said it, that when they beamed down, he was worried that they would beam down and everybody would look like Data. So with my limited Photoshop skills, I put Data's head on everybody there. It was a little bit of fun. I love when I get just random inspirations like that. But I love the adding. I love this episode so much. Adding lore to the episode was such a fantastic idea. Just having the sibling dynamic was great. Yeah, could have done without the thumbnail thing. I personally thought he looked fantastic in the Packlet outfit. It kind of suited him a little bit. I personally thought the kids in the episode did a great job. I certainly hope that when Data gave Jake the dinosaurs at the end of the episode, that he apologized for scaring the heck out of him in that turbo lift, because he had that kid like in a half panic. And the little Willie, the little guy, he was just such a little cutie pie. Beverly does a fantastic job, getting to flex her mom skills with the kids, telling Willie the awesome joke about, hey, it hurts when I do this. Well, don't do that. I've loved that joke pretty much my entire life. And a minor gush over one of the guest stars, the ensign that is in the episode. We do see that actor again on Deep Space Nine in a different role for a couple of episodes in season 1. But as a Gilmore Girls fan, he pops up in one episode in like the final season of Gilmore Girls. So I see him and I'm like, oh, look, it's Howard. Sadly, we only got him in the one episode for that too, but he's got just a really neat voice, and because it was Gilmore Girls related, I had to gush a tiny bit. But Laura especially, he both breaks my heart a little bit and makes me absolutely laugh out loud. As he's leaving, when he shows that he clearly cares for his dad, because he's in the middle of leaving and Sue says, wait, I'm dying. He turns around, and that moment, I believe, was absolutely genuine from him, instead of him trying to put on the front that he usually does, that he's above it all, because he genuinely cares about Sue. And anybody with siblings has done what Lore did with Data, when Data's like, wait, I'm not less perfect than Lore. I'm not less perfect than Lore. If you've got a sibling, you have absolutely done that a time or two yourself. I can't remember specifics, but I'm pretty sure I have, or at least in my head anyway. But that line actually inspired the limerick for the episode. And I've got a couple small things, but I'll save those for things left unsaid. But here is the limerick. I am not less perfect than Lore. Why did Father make you such a bore? Since he tore me apart, I'll take your chip for a start. Now that I've got it, I'll walk out the door.
Great stuff. Thank you very much, Carrie Schwent, aka Crafty Bear. You did remind me of a joke when you mentioned the Beverly Crusher thing. Guy walks into the doctor's office. He's like, Doc, I'm a mess. You got to help me out here. I hurt everywhere. He's like, what's wrong? He says, well, it hurts when I do this. It hurts here. It hurts here. And the doctor goes, oh, you broke your finger. All right. So that's a visual joke for everybody just listening in. Okay. Faith Howell is here. She's like, that was terrible. Let's move on. And you're right. What do you think of this episode?
So I generally don't remember liking the lore episodes that much, but I did feel a little happier about watching this one this time. I really liked how Lore reacted when he came in and was like, "Hey, no, you're not that old. You're fine." And I thought, well, what if we didn't even have the B plot in this? Like, I feel like that was added to add urgency, but Soong dying to me reads like it's a perfect amount of urgency to this story. What if they had just he had called the two children together, and then it's a story about, an estranged parent reconnecting and how the two different personalities react and feed into that family dynamic. I think that would have been a perfect story and could easily have carried the hour without having to even have the B plot. And I got a little lost on the but brothers forgive data. I was kind of confused by that at the end. Yeah, okay, but Lore's kind of a jerk. Like, I don't think he's looking for forgiveness, but I think it would have been a more interesting dynamic to look at how Lore's emotion without the extra added chip fed into, and maybe he still stole the chip, but having it implanted in him and then taking it seems a little redundant somehow. So I think I would like to see this one rewritten somehow. Is that an option?
Kinda. Thank you very much, Faith Howell. Great stuff as always. From the helm of the Enterprise D. All right. Chris McGee is here. He's the Dark Lord. What do you think of this one?
Well, after hearing so much about Dr. Noonien Soong for 3 seasons, we finally get to see him in the flesh and latex. But as a kid, I remember being so upset that he dies at the end, but as an adult, I understand that his death helped to increase the drama and to demonstrate, of course, just how dangerous Lore is, as if we didn't already know. Brent Spiner, my goodness, his ability to play 3 completely different characters with different personalities, mannerisms, motivations, etc. I think that demonstrates his range as an actor, and I think he did an amazing job. So it's probably already mentioned it in the previous segment even. I can't even imagine how much he had to go through to prepare for this almost one-man show, especially with so much makeup needed for all 3 of the characters. Here's a little bit of easy trivia. The song that Data whistles, Pop Goes the Weasel, is the same one he whistles when we first see him in Encounter at Farpoint. That may have been mentioned before, but anyway, maybe that's the only whistling song he knows. I don't know. And as someone with a passing interest in philosophy, I greatly appreciate the little human psychology discussion between Soong and Data about humans' need for continuity, that sense of immortality, as Soong put it. And I'll save any other comments and nitpicks for things left unsaid. So I'll go straight to my memorable quote, which Carrie took my first choice there of, "I am not less perfect than Lore." And instead go with my second choice, which is 1 7 3 4 6 7 3 2 1 4 7 6 Charlie 3 2 7 8 9 7 7 7 6 4 3 Tango 6 7 3 2 Victor 7 3 1 1 7 8 8 8 7 3 2 4 7 6 7 8 9 7 6 4 3 7 6 Lock.
Say that 5 times fast. Am I right?
Yeah.
Very good, Chris McGee, who never fails. Thank you very much for that. Allyson Leach-Heid is here. She is somewhere in Nebraska, if you can believe her luck. What do you think of this episode?
I like this episode. It's weirdly fun and kind of terrifying all at the same time. Because, yeah, sorry if you hear my puppies whining. Because, we're doing children dying as like the peril of the episode. I'm like, I don't like that. But, we know nothing's really going to happen to Willie. He's going to be fine. Brent Spiner is wonderful. I really enjoyed that he got so much time to practice before he got to film. He got a couple of days to run through with the director because he wasn't in the previous episode. So he got to prepare for this one, and they blocked out Soong's house for him, so he got to like really play with, how these shots would do, so he could play all the characters. I also really enjoyed that he didn't know how to play Noonien Soong until he saw himself in makeup, and then he went, "Yeah, I'm going to do this. This is the character." Really enjoyed that too, and this is just, a wonderful example of how truly talented Spiner is. So it's always fun to watch. And for me, I think Willie has the best line of why he doesn't do practical jokes is because it just hurts the person who's being joked on, and he's right.
Excellent. Great stuff. Thank you very much, Allyson Leach-Heid. Now, that's multitasking, though. Seriously, I would be so distracted if I was in a car going cross country. I wouldn't be able to complete a thought, but very good stuff. Thank you so much for that. The Matt Boardman is here. He got the memo. Let's do our backgrounds exactly the same, everybody. What do you think of this one?
Oh, it's always a fun one. I really like this episode in the sense that it's, this is another weave in the tapestry that makes up Data. I mean, if you will, some Data lore building. Because, we find out in the first season where Data came from, but now, and we've heard Soong talked about, and now we get to see Soong, in the flesh, so to speak. And I love the dynamic of Brent playing against Brent. I mean, he really does such a fantastic job. I actually I watched Independence Day last night because
cool.
That's what you do on the 4th of July, right? And the joke that I always make is, and that's just, I love that he has such a range, and I love these episodes where we let actors go and let them do their craft and just and to see them excel at it. I mean, there are very distinct differences between Soong, between Data, and between lore. And one thing that has always stuck with me throughout the years is when Soong and Data are having the discussion as to why he created Data, why he created lore. And and he's talking about how, if you brought this alien species in, they would look at these old human buildings and say, tear that eyesore down and everything. And the end result of it is that as mortal beings, having a family, that is our legacy that we're passing on to people down the line. And that has always been, as I've had a family of my own, that's always been kind of a significant thing as my years increase and as, life goes later on, I often wonder, what legacy is it that I'm leaving, and hopefully I've instilled in my kids enough to where, people will look at my kids and say, hey, as a dad, he did a good job. But and then the other thing that always sticks in my mind is that freaking song that Lore is singing, the Sons of the Prophet or whatever, as he's beaming out, and that lives rent free in my head, and it has for 30 years, and it won't go away. But no, great episode. Like Cirroc said, the B plot is a little bit forgettable, but I concur with Jason. Greatly shot. Overall, a wonderful addition to Data's backstory and what makes up Data.
However, the A plot, you won't soon forget. Am I right? All right. So that's it for us, everybody. If you can believe ending on that low note. Thank you to Alice. Wait a minute. Whoa.
Jake's final take.
It's Jake's final take. So sorry. I was actually just looking up the lady that did nail polish of all Jake Sisko shirts. You remember that? I can't find it though. If anybody can find it, definitely send it in. It's totally amazing. Jake's final take. Any final thoughts on this one?
Yeah, it's funny because Dr. Soong looks a little bit like the Grand Nagus if you kind of really look at him. I like the moment when Data towards the end says to Riker, may I say goodbye? And then he looks and he gives him a second, then he says, alone, sir. And he kind of gives him the moment. It was special for me. I enjoyed Data kind of putting his foot down on that. Like, I need some alone time for this. This actually means something more to me than a public conversation that I want to have in front of everybody. That was a level of awareness and maturity, I think, for Data in my own observation. Also, when Worf comes out of the room carrying a lifeless Data in his hands, it seemed as if number one activated him by pressing something on his backside or something, turning him on. And I was wondering, where is that on button exactly? Because it jumped out at me a little bit. It was like it was like, whoa, he jumped back up all of a sudden.
He goosed him.
I have that same reaction when people touch me there.
It was kind of a jump up. I was like, whoa, what did he do? Where's his on button exactly?
Well, it is
unusual location.
It's been established to be in the back.
Sasha Yar knows.
Yeah, she does. She knows where they all are.
That's Sue.
Wow.
Sense of humor.
Yeah. Riker was all too happy to when he pressed that on button. There was a level of joy that he felt when he actually turned them on. It was funny to me.
Yeah.
Also, I wanted to ask, and I this kind of got away from me. There was a moment where Dr. Soong had a comm badge open, and it seemed as if he was taking something out of it to something. And I don't know if that's where the tracking device was, or what was the significance of that comm badge and the contents of it, of what was inside of it. I didn't quite get that, and I wasn't able to stop and rewind that particular portion. But it just jumped out to me, like I didn't understand what was inside of that comm badge that was significant to the storyline. And we'll probably get into a little bit of that and things left unsaid. And then lastly, I want to just again give a lot of credit to the set designers that were tasked with filling Dr. Soong's laboratory. It did seem like a place I would be very curious to spend some time in and just walk around, picking up books off the shelves and looking at things. It looked like a place that I would be having fun in, dinosaur skeletons and, little Michelangelo, Da Vinci looking kind of pinwheel things and whatnot. So the way they designed that, I thought was really great. So kudos to the set designers in this particular episode who made that laboratory really feel like a place of wonderment. And I enjoyed that a lot. So yeah, those are my final takes.
Matt Boardman says, Hollywood rentals for the win. Yeah, totally.
Yeah, right.
Good stuff. All right. And now, after that great final take by Jake, thank you very much to Allyson, Matt, Chris, Faith, Carrie, Jason, and Melissa. For myself, Cirroc Lofton, Melissa Longo, and Mr. Aaron Eisenberg, thank you all for hanging out with us. We really appreciate it, and we hope to see you next time. And until then, always remember the 7th rule.